Number 10, Miss Marvel. If you want to see where the word woke got glued onto comics like a sticker that won't peel off, look no further than Miss Marvel 2014. Marvel didn't just give us another teen hero, they gave us Kamala Khan, a Pakistani American Muslim girl from Jersey City who actually went to mosque, argued with her parents, fangirled over the Avengers, and still had to sneak out past curfew. Suddenly, superhero life wasn't about Gotham skylines or Asgardian myths. It was about dinner at home and awkward high school parties. And that was enough to make some readers scream, agenda. The identity focus was impossible to miss. Kamala's family life and faith weren't window dressing, they were center stage. On top of that, her powers came through Marvel's then heavy push for Inhumans, which looked to critics like editorial engineering diversity. Look, she's different, and she's an Inhuman too. What made it even worse was Marvel openly admitting she filled a gap in representation, a movie detractors read as corporate strategy dressed up as storytelling. Yet the actual series? It worked. Kamala wasn't written as a lecture, but as a teenager juggling memes, crushes, and powers that turned her into a stretchy mess. Her debut arc even snagged a Hugo Award, and the book sold well enough to become one of Marvel's most stable modern titles. By the last page, Kamala's big superpower wasn't just embigging, it was stretching comics discourse until it snapped like a cheap bangle. Number 9, Captain Marvel. In 2012, Marvel decided Carol Danvers wasn't going to be a sidekick, a cheesecake pinup, or Miss Anything anymore. She got a new name, new suit, and a new mission, Captain Marvel. Writer Kelly Sue DeConnick didn't just update the character, she turned Carol into a banner for feminism in comics. And that's why the woke label stuck like duct tape. From page 1, the book made clear that Carol's story was not about romance, but agency. Her arcs kept circling back to the same choice: career, leadership, and duty over settling down. On top of that, the comic didn't exist in isolation. DeConnick openly welcomed and built the Carol Corps, which is basically a fandom of cosplayers and readers who rallied around Carol like she was both a superhero and a movement. What made it even worse for critics was how unapologetically feminist the whole package was. The stories leaned into military sexism, gatekeeping, and legacy myths instead of sticking to cosmic fistfights. Of course, this didn't play quietly. Fans who loved it said the series finally gave Carol the weight she deserved. Detractors rolled their eyes and said the feminism bled too directly into the fiction. But the numbers and reviews showed that DeConnick's vision kind of worked as a reinvention. The voice was strong, the character focus consistent, and the fan energy undeniable. At last, Carol's big trick wasn't flying into space or punching holes in battleships. It was creating a fandom army that could carpet bomb Twitter with hashtags. Number 8, all new X-Men number 40. One of Marvel's messiest woke debates didn't come from a new hero, but from rewriting an old one. In 2015, Bobby Drake, yes, the original Iceman, was suddenly revealed to be gay, and the way it happened lit fandom on fire. The scene went like this. Young Bobby's mind gets read by Jean Grey, who casually announces, "You're gay," before he even gets the chance to say it himself. Some readers cheered, others groaned, and everyone argued about whether Marvel had just forced an identity swap through telepathy. The controversy snowballed because Bobby had decades of history dating women. Were those romances all repression? Beards? Continuity slip-ups? Fans couldn't agree. On top of that, the later Uncanny X-Men issue doubled down by having older Bobby accept the same truth, which made the whole thing feel less like character development and more like editorial decree. What made it even worse was that queer readers themselves weren't unified. Some praised overdue representation, while others thought a bisexual angle or slower reveal would have been more believable. Then came the solo Iceman series by Sina Grace, which finally slowed down and gave Bobby space to wrestle with identity, family tension, and awkward dating life. The storytelling there landed better, though the stain of the telepathic outing never really faded. In the end, Bobby's outing showed that the coldest thing Marvel could do isn't an ice blast. It's dropping a continuity bomb and letting fans argue over the shards. Number 7, Batwoman, Elegy. If you want to see where Gotham first slapped with the woke label, you have to go to Batwoman's big return in 2006. DC dusted off the old name and handed the cowl to Kate Kane, a wealthy Gotham socialite who also happened to be openly lesbian ex-soldier. Her origin wasn't random either. It was tied directly to the military's don't ask, don't tell policy, which had kicked her out of West Point. Suddenly, the Bat family wasn't just about brooding on rooftops, it was about identity, politics, and a spotlight big enough to make some readers squirm. The first raised eyebrows for 3 reasons. First, Kate's sexuality wasn't background flavor. It was front and center from the opening arc, woven into the family drama and relationships. On top of that, her debut came wrapped in prestige packaging. The Elegee storyline ran in Detective Comics with stunning page layouts and even a foreword from Rachel Maddow. What made it even worse for skeptics was that DC wasn't shy about the timing. This was the 52-era relaunch, when editorial was openly diversifying its lineup, so Batwoman looked like a strategy as much as storytelling. Now, the comic itself wasn't a throwaway stunt. Greg Rucka's writing and J.H. Williams III's dizzying page designs picked up awards and glad recognition. Still, that same high art representation gave critics ammo to dismiss it as a statement piece than rather a character study. At her core, Kate Kane proved that Gotham doesn't run on bat signals or gadgets, it runs on the sheer power of making a foreword by Rachel Maddow canon. Number 6, Ultimate Spider-Man. When Marvel killed off Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe back in 2011, they didn't resurrect him with some wild sci-fi twist. Instead, they handed the webs to a Brooklyn teenager named Miles Morales, a kid who happened to be black and Puerto Rican. Cue the internet meltdown. For some readers, this wasn't bold storytelling, it was Marvel waving a giant diversity quota banner over Spidey's grave. The outrage circled 3 storm clouds. First, identity. A white hero who'd been around for half a century suddenly had his mask sitting on a kid of color. That shift, to critics, felt less like plot and more like politics. On top of that, Miles arrived right as Marvel was openly stacking its roster with new faces and different backgrounds, so conspiracy theories about corporate agendas practically wrote themselves. What made it even worse was the online reaction. Heated threads, harassment, and plenty of comments that had less to do with storytelling and more to do with race. Yet, the actual comic wasn't about some hollow checkbox exercise. Miles had his own family drama, his own voice, and even new powers like venom blasts and camouflage. He wasn't Peter Light, and his world carried stakes Peter never faced. That's why the run hit with critics, and why Miles eventually swung out of the comic shop into movies like Into the Spider-Verse, games, and merch empires. At the end of the day, Miles showed that the mask doesn't care who wears it, unless of course the mask is allergic to internet comment sections. Number 5, A-Force. What happens when Marvel takes the Avengers and hits the no boys allowed switch? You get the A-Force, a 2015 Secret Wars spinoff that dropped Earth's mightiest heroes in a battle world as an all-female lineup defending the island of Arcadia. It wasn't subtle either. The book was marketed from day one as the Women's Avengers, and that's exactly why the woke label attached itself before readers even cracked open issue number 1. The identity-first branding made waves right away. Instead of mixing the roster like usual, Marvel leaned hard into gender as the selling point. On top of that, the series set Arcadia up as a kind of utopian zone. Peaceful, orderly, and led entirely by women. That framing had its supporters, but it also made critics groan that the comic was less about battles and more about political signaling. What made it even worse was how some of the art and covers still fell back on cheesecake angles and costume shots, which gave detractors ammo to argue the representation was more surface level than transformative. For all that, the first issue actually read well. Critics praised the voice, art, and big-name roster. But sales tell the harsher story. After a flashy debut, the numbers tanked fast, with reports showing nearly an 80% drop by Volume 2, issue number 9. Within a year, the series was quietly gone, PR buzz and all. By the finale, A-Force proved that you can assemble every heroine in Marvel history, but the real battle is keeping sales alive longer than a cosplay photo shoot. Number 4, Captain America number 25, and all-new Captain America. In 2014, Marvel made one of its boldest moves. They took the Star-Spangled Shield away from Steve Rogers and handed it to Sam Wilson, better known as the Falcon. Overnight, Captain America was no longer the blonde soldier from Brooklyn, but a black ex-paratrooper with a history tied to community work and street-level struggles. For some fans, this wasn't just a plot twist. It felt like Marvel had turned the most patriotic hero into a political statement. The reaction centered on three things. First, the mantle swap itself. Announcing the new Captain America as Sam Wilson made identity the headline, and plenty of people saw that as Marvel flexing an agenda. On top of that, the actual stories leaned directly into politics. Nick Spencer and Daniel Acuna had Sam wrestle with questions about what America means, who the shield serves, and whether patriotism includes confronting systemic injustice. To critics, that looked less like heroics and more like a lecture. What made it even worse was how those debates jumped out of the comics and onto the mainstream culture once the MCU picked up the storyline. Suddenly, Sam's speeches weren't confined to panels, they were on Disney Plus, sparking the same arguments on a global stage. The funny thing is, the comics themselves weren't disasters. Many reviewers said the run gave Cap fresh stakes, even if some beats felt clunky. In short, handing the shield to Sam made Captain America less about apple pie and more about who's actually allowed to sit at the table, stars, stripes, and side-eyed included. Number 3, Thor. In 2014, Marvel dropped a thunderbolt that split the fandom like a crack in Yggdrasil. Thor wasn't Thor anymore. Jane Foster was. Jason Aaron's run with Russell Donterman's art handed Mjolnir to a cancer-stricken doctor while the original Odinson stumbled around unworthy, moody, and kind of unemployed. Fans didn't just raise eyebrows. They hurled the word woke like it was just another hammer. Why the uproar? Well, for one, gender. A woman took over one of Marvel's most macho mantles, and that alone lit up forums. On top of that, Odinson's fall wasn't famed as noble tragedy, but as a failure of character, which to some felt like a lecture. Add to make things even spicier, this came during Marvel's big diversity push, which critics of corporate pandering saw as the real lightning storm. The story itself leaned hard on worthiness as a moral and social twist. Jane lifting Mjolnir was inspiring, sure, but every swing of the hammer also shredded her chemo-weakened body, dragging her closer to death. That twist turned every fight into both a victory and a loss. Meanwhile, Odinson mostly sulked in the background, reminding readers that even gods can be benched when editorial wants to make a point. In the end, Jane's Thor era showed that even cancer couldn't stop Marvel from swinging the hammer of representation like it weighed nothing. Number 2, Son of Kal-El, number 5. Superman's son didn't need kryptonite to cause controversy. All it took was a kiss. In 2021, Jon Kent, freshly aged up and carrying the mantle of Superman, locked lips with Jay Nakamura in Son of Kal-El, number 5. The image was splashed across covers, timed with coming out day and backed by DC's own PR push. Suddenly, the new Superman wasn't making headlines for punching meteors, but for being openly bisexual, and the woke label stuck to him faster than a cape in a wind tunnel. The uproar had layers. First, the reveal wasn't subtle. It was a glossy cover-ready moment, designed to be seen anywhere. On top of that, Jon hadn't been Superman for long, so critics argued his identity was being used as a launch strategy instead of a slow-burn character arc. What made it even worse for detractors was how quickly this kiss escaped comic shop walls and hit news cycles, cable pundits, and angry social media threads, where homophobic backlash and political hot takes turned one issue into a culture war flashpoint. As for the story itself, reactions were split. Some praised Tom Taylor for weaving Jon's queerness into a Superman who also fights climate change, corruption, and the usual supervillains. Others rolled their eyes, saying the kiss felt rushed and more like marketing than storytelling. Sales were strong regardless, and the character didn't fade away. When all was said and done, Jon Kent made history by showing that nothing splits America faster than truth, justice, and a kiss on issue number 5. Number 1, New Warriors 2020. Marvel didn't need to print an issue to set the internet on fire. In 2020, the company announced a New Warriors relaunch with a roster that included twin heroes literally named Snowflake and Safe Space. Yes, Marvel used two of the internet's favorite cultural war insults as superhero code names. And yes, they meant it seriously. When writer Daniel Kibblesmith said the goal was reclamation, the kids wore those words as badges of honor. The problem? Most fans didn't laugh, they cringed. The backlash hit hard for a few reasons. First, the names themselves weren't clever metaphors or cool mythical titles. They were ripped straight from Twitter fights, so people saw the book as a press release disguised as a comic. On top of that, Marvel's bios revealed Snowflake was non-binary and the twins were black, which made the lineup look like an identity showcase stacked on top of an already provocative names. What made it even worse was the rollout. Marvel hyped the new preview with glossy PR in March 2020, right when online culture war outrage was hitting fever pitch. Within days, the characters were YouTube meme fodder. And here's the kicker, the comic never came out. Between COVID disruptions and the firestorm of backlash, the series was quietly canceled before issue number 1 even shipped. So no one can say whether the satire might have landed or if it would have collapsed under its own branding. In the end, the book never launched, but Marvel still gave us the rarest power of all, superheroes whose greatest enemies was a press release. Well, that's it for this one. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss a drop. Craving more stories from comics, movies, and beyond? Check out this video right here. Cheers, and see you in the next one.